Chapter 25. Gods Touched. I sat in my study in the Red Keep, reading a book about old magic that had supposedly been prevalent when Valyria was still at the height of its power. Tyrion sat next to me, flipping through the pages of a book which detailed the histories of the Targaryen dragons. We'd been sitting quietly, reading and sipping our tea or wine, occasionally pointing out some interesting passage that we thought the other might appreciate. It was nights like this that I appreciated most of all. Getting to learn about a world in more detail that its original creators could never possibly delve into was always interesting to me. Mehrunes, Triana, and Aelfric slept soundly in front of the fire, like lazy dogs, enjoying the warmth. At this point, they were the size of large dogs and made for excellent footrests. Mehrunes always stayed closed enough that I could put my feet up on his back while he rested. Nights like these were also small, unspoken punishments for Robert. Because he had drunk and whored his way through his reign, he had never taken the time to learn anything. So I ensured that whenever we settled into the study to read, he was the Queen's Guard, on duty. Robert sighed as he looked at the pair of us. "This is fun for you, is it? Just sitting there, reading, doing nothing?" Tyrion didn't bother to look up at him as he replied, "Sitting here we may be, but doing nothing." "We are learning, my good sir." "Learning," Robert scoffed. "Not something I would have bothered with. Not much good old books can do for someone hundreds of years after they were written." "What an odd thing to say," Tyrion quipped as he grinned slyly up at Robert. "Coming from a man whose wife cuckolded him for her own brother. Perhaps you should have read up on the Targaryens. Anyone as hopeful as my sister was to marry one, no doubt, had to fancy something similar." Robert flinched with irritation, but he knew better than to act on the anger the comment brought out in him. He took a breath and sighed. I suppose, looking back on it, that it was obvious. She spent so much time with him. She wasn't subtle about where she wanted him, I mused as I flipped a page in my book. When the Mad King named her brother to the King's Guard, Tywin was ready to stop the whole thing. But it was Cersei who insisted he take the position. "Why would she want that, though?" Robert asked. "That sent him away from her." "It sent him to King's Landing," I clarified, "where the man she thought she was going to marry, Prince Rhaegar, lived. She was sending him ahead so that they could be together there." I could feel Robert's eyes on me as he realized just how devious his wife had truly been. She had planned on being with him no matter who she married. Devil of a woman. Tyrion barked a laugh. "I don't believe anyone has ever described her better." Robert gave a grin. "Oh, you haven't heard the..." The sound of a fist pounding on the study door interrupted him. The dragons all raised their heads, turning to see what the commotion was. I watched the hopeful spark in Robert's eyes as he longed for someone to try and cause trouble, but when the dragons made no move, I was concerned. Robert was disappointed, however, as the person on the other side called out. "Your Grace!" Maester Paul shouted. "An urgent message from Dragonstone!" Robert tugged the door open and glared down at the Maester. "What could be so urgent that you come shouting and pounding at the Queen's door this late at night?" He snatched the small scroll from the man and slammed the door in his face. As he handed me the scroll, I gave him an exasperated expression. "Let him in, Robert." "If it's as urgent as Maester Paul claims, then I'll need him to send a reply." Robert was a fair man, but his respect and admiration did not lend themselves to scholarly efforts. He bowed his head and opened the door, glared down at Paul, then motioned for him to come in. As Paul entered the study, I unfurled the small scroll and began to read. My eyes narrowed immediately. My eyes locked with Paul's. "Their Maester has confirmed it?" Paul nodded grimly. "He has, Your Grace. Lady Shireen has contracted grayscale." I slapped the scroll down, pinning it to the arm of my chair with an accusatory finger. "Stannis said she contracted it months ago, though. Why didn't he write me sooner?" Stannis is the answer to your question, Your Grace, Robert replied with irritation. He wouldn't bother someone with his troubles unless he had no other recourse. It's a testament to how much he loves that girl that he reached out to you at all. Your brother is a fair and just lord, but he's a damn fool for putting his daughter's health at risk for so long, I sighed. I focused on Maester Pole. Send a reply. Command Lord Stannis to bring his daughter to King's Landing. The drowned god will cure his daughter. Maester Pole stared at me for a few moments, going over my answer in his head before he bowed his head. As you wish, my queen. I'll send the raven immediately. With that, he turned and rushed back down the hall. Robert and Tyrion stared at me. The question on both of their minds was obvious. I marked the page of my book with the scroll and closed it so I could focus on them. You're wondering how the drowned god will cure the grayscale. The though had crossed my mind, Tyrion nodded. Gods aren't the most active participants in this life, though some would argue that everything that happens is due to their will. I've seen no such evidence of that. That's because the seven aren't real, I replied, a haunting warning in my voice. But the drowned god is. He speaks to me, sends me visions, and guides me, and if I call upon him, he will make himself known. I don't know if that's a comfort or not, Robert replied. I smirked slyly. The drowned god might not be the prettiest thing you've laid eyes on, but he is real. I want to prepare a demonstration with Lady Shireen. Have an announcement made. All citizens who can attend must. I want to show them that the drowned god not only hears them, but will keep them safe. The raven would take a day to get to Dragonstone. The trip by sea would take another 2 or 3 depending on what kind of winds Stannis encountered. Those 2 days were spent spreading the announcement and preparing the docks. Rumors flooded the capital about what the announcement would be. Several dozen craftsmen were brought in to build a large platform, which would allow people to see anyone on top of it, no matter where in attendance they were. With the physical preparations completed, I had to prepare the metaphysical components. I stood in the void, bare feet stepping lightly through black, oily water. My crimson hair flowed in a non-existent wind, billowing out like a comet's tail. I made my way through the endless nothing, bare-skinned and exposed to the eternal black. I didn't know how long I was there. Seconds, minutes, hours? Eventually, it made itself known. I could see the darkness ripple ahead of me, churning and only just noticeable enough for me to tell it was there. I couldn't make out its roiling shape, but I could tell it was flowing, and staying just far enough away to be perceived but not seen, as if it was protecting me from the revelation of its reality. I stopped the moment it appeared, as if it were some kind of mutually agreed reaction. You called to me, the shifting void said. I did, I replied. It wasn't the first time I'd encountered a being like this, or spoke to one. It was difficult to admit, but I was beginning to grow used to interacting with nebulous beings. Speak, then. Its voice echoed in my mind. What need have you of me? I need you to become more active in the lives of mortals, I replied. In a few days, you will feel my power calling to you. I need you to reach out and touch a child who will be with me, and banish the illness that has begun to take her. Why should I do this? The voice reverberated. It was neither offensive nor salacious. Instead, it asked the question in a way that encouraged me to explain myself. You asked me to spread your word, I began. All I have done in this life, I have attributed to you. Those who worship you now worship you more fervently. Those hearing of my deeds have the worship of you stirred within them. There are regions in this world that hold you as their God that never before would have. With this act, I intend to grow your influence. How will you use this influence? It prodded me to continue. Religious faith is one of the strongest motivators in the human psyche, I explained. The more evidence of your influence they see, the more people begin to worship you. The deeper their faith, the more they are willing to do in the name of that faith. The dead will begin to march in the next decade or so. I need men so devoted to you, and thus through me as your avatar, that they will put all fear of death from their minds and stand their ground against the White Walkers. You desire zealotry, it said in understanding. For you and for the realm, I nodded. I thought I sensed amusement from the being before it responded. Very well, I will play my part in this display. Go now. When the call comes, I will respond. I was in my bed again. Tyrion was sleeping soundly next to me as the morning sun crept through the window's shutters. The drowned god has agreed to assist me, and I was content to take it at its word. Preparations continued for the next 2 days when Stannis' ship arrived in the harbor. I went to welcome him personally, leaving early so that I could talk with citizens along the way, distribute food, and offer coin to those who needed it. All the while insisting to them that it was the drowned god who commanded that I take care of my own. Mace had done an excellent job of rotating and redistributing the stores of food so that fewer and fewer people were going hungry. Well-fed people were more industrious and committed fewer crimes. The master of stores was a stroke of genius, if I were to say so myself. We were at the dock as Stannis' ship was weighing anchor. The Queen's Guard fanned out around me as Tyrion and I stood near the gangplank as it was lowered and secured to the pier. Baratheon guards, sporting a black stag over blue waves, marched down the plank, followed by Stannis, his wife Selyse, their daughter Shireen, and someone I did not want to see, Melisandre, a priestess of the god of fire. My eyes narrowed as I watched her calmly make her way towards us. The guards parted, and Stannis approached, offering a bow of his head. Your Grace, thank you for agreeing to help my daughter. My expression shifted to warm and welcoming as I addressed Stannis. There's no need to thank me. You are my friend, and a devout follower of the drowned god. It's the least we can do for you. I shifted my focus to Selyse. It's so good to see you again, my lady. I trust you're doing well? Selyse curtsied. I have been, Your Grace, yes. We are grateful for your help with Shireen. She motioned to her daughter, who was standing by her side. Shireen was thin like her mother, sharp-featured like her father, but with eyes that were infinitely more curious than either of them. She also happened to be slightly taller than me. I smiled at her. My lady. It's so good to finally meet you. Shireen curtsied. Her reply was hesitant and bashful. The pleasure is mine, Your Grace. I stepped forward, raising my hand to pinch her chin gently between my fingers. She flinched slightly as I took a closer look. Don't worry, dear. You're all right. I just want to get a better look at it. The grayscale disease had taken hold of the left side of her face and was about the size of my fist. The skin was blistered, with the outer layers beginning to harden. My brow furrowed as I looked at it, the symptoms strangely familiar. As I inspected it, I could sense a faint magical energy coming from it. Then realization hit me. This was lyrium poisoning. Unrefined lyrium was extremely poisonous to humans. Even touching the stuff caused the skin to blister, crack, blacken, and eventually harden. Prolonged exposure also caused dementia and even madness. The stone men, the people affected by grayscale, they were being affected by lyrium poisoning. I had realized long ago that Valyrian steel weapons had been made from alloying iron and carbon to create steel, then adding an additional infusion of lyrium. There were lyrium pockets and veins all throughout Essos. There were mines that connected to some of them. Grayscale's rarity in Westeros made much more sense now. If it was an actual disease, it wouldn't be limited to Essos, since trade between the two continents was common. It was poisoning, and started when miners or explorers came across raw lyrium. I immediately understood the problem. People would discover it, find it beautiful, and begin to extract it, not knowing how dangerous it was. They would grow sick. The items the lyrium was kept in, on or near, would find their way through a population by being given away, sold, or stolen. As the lyrium was rubbed away from an object, the less it would affect people. Eventually, the plague would abate, and people would never know what caused it. But greed would get the best of some merchant, and eventually, people would start to mine the area once more. Clearly, some ancient smiths had figured out how to handle and refine the material relatively safely. The small number of smiths who knew the secret was evidence enough that the exposure to the raw material still wore on their minds over time. I could cure her right then. Lyrium was essentially magic made manifest, and I was the source of magic. It would be a simple matter to simply will the poisoning away. But I needed the spectacle that tomorrow would bring. Instead, I gave Shireen a bright, reassuring smile. There's nothing to worry about. It will be gone tomorrow, and you'll never know it was there. Truly? Shireen gasped as she dared a smile. I swear it, I nodded. But you must be brave. All if King's Landing will be watching, and the drowned god will appear. He will be terrifying to look upon, but I know you are just as brave as your father. You will stand your ground and welcome his blessing, won't you? Shireen nodded, a blanket of bravery draped over her anxiousness. I will, Your Grace. I swear it. That's a good girl, I smiled. I turned my attention back to Stannis. Come. We have much to discuss. I didn't bother to acknowledge Melisandre for now. She seemed to understand the wisdom of keeping her mouth shut for now. She was one priestess of her god, while I was the avatar of mine. If she knew what I was planning, or if she'd had a vision about me before arriving, I didn't care. Stannis's banners were still a reflection of his devotion to the drowned god, after it had helped us break the blockade during the rebellion. However, I didn't trust that she wasn't trying to worm her way into Stannis's ear. Stannis was loyal to a fault, and repaid loyalty with his unshakable resolve. But Melisandre had a way of getting men to follow her. The day was spent catching up and enjoying our time together. I had Jon escort Shireen through the Godswood with Ghost and ensured she was allowed to visit the library if she chose to. I informed Stannis on how things would go the next day, and gave him my reassurances that his daughter would be all right. For all his rigidness and uncompromising nature, he loved and cared for Shireen. At noon the next day, the small council, the Queen's Guard, Stannis and his family, the nobles of the court, as well as Tyrion and myself, made our way to the docks. As we arrived, we found a path prepared for us that made its way through a massive crowd of people, leading to the platform that had been built. Cheers began to erupt throughout the crowd as we arrived, with many citizens shouting, "Long live the Queen," "All hail Her Majesty," and other such praise. King's Landing hadn't seen such prosperity since before the reign of the Mad King, so it was no wonder why they were happy to see me. Mehrunes, Triana, and Aelfric circled us, letting out excited cries and letting the people marvel at the sight of them. Once we were on the platform, with Shireen by my side, I turned to face the crowd. Citizens of King's Landing, Wesserosians all. Thank you for taking your time to attend this demonstration today. There was a large cheer that went up and lasted for some time before I could continue. As you all know, I am a devout follower of the drowned god, I said. Everything I have done for you has been done because it is his will. I know most of you do not worship the drowned god, nor would I ever demand that you do. You have your faith, and I will never begrudge anyone for who they choose to worship. I let the crowd's thoughts wander, seeing a few pendants or icons depicting the drowned god, being held up for me to see. But today, I want you all to bear witness to what the drowned god can and will do for its followers, I continued. I placed my hand on Shireen's shoulder. This is Lady Shireen Baratheon. By some cruel twist of fate, she has contracted grayscale. There was a veritable shiver then ran through the crowd, and those closest to us pushed themselves back into the crowd. Today, I will call upon the drowned god to cleanse this blight from her, I said as I smiled at her. I looked at the crowd. But be warned, the sight of a god is terrifying to behold, and you will want to flee. But be not afraid. While the sight of his arrival may make you tremble with fear, I want you to focus on what he does. Do not let mortal fear overcome you and make you miss the sight of a genuine miracle. With that, I turned to face the water. I knelt down in prayer and called out so that the crowd could still hear me. My Lord, my God, hear the voice of your servant and know my plea. Come to my aid and touch this girl. Cleanse her body with your healing waters so that all may bear witness to your magnanimity and power. I stood and turned to Shireen. As soon as my back was to the water, a geyser, taller than the Red Keep, burst forth. I watched the expression of the crowd and the people on the platform go from curious to horrified as massive tentacle appeared through falling spray of water. The crowd huddled tightly, many looking like they wanted to run. But their curiosity overcame their fear, watching intently in order to see what would happen. I stepped toward Shireen, making sure the afflicted side of her face was visible to the crowd. I raised my hand, and the tentacle moved forward, the tip of it hovering over my outstretched fingers. Shireen, I said as I looked at the girl. She wore her bravery well, even though I could see how shocked and anxious she was. Will accept the healing touch of the drowned god? Shireen nervously shook her head. Yes, your grace. Stand still, child, I commanded gently. I lowered my hand and the tentacle followed my movement and stroked Shireen's cheek. Shireen flinched ever so slightly as the tentacle slid across her cheek, caressing it tenderly. I watched as her ravaged flesh knit itself back together and bloomed with health once again. More so, I noticed that Shireen was infused with new strength as the drowned god imbued some of its power into her. Others might not have noticed this, but I could sense the immense strength coming from her now. As the crowd witnessed her revitalization, they gasped and whispered. Shireen's face was healed before their eyes. The tentacle pulled back and stopped ahead of me, facing me as if waiting for something. I bowed to it, calling out so that the crowd could hear me once more. Your servant thanks you for your kindness. I am honored and humbled by your gracious gift of healing. Thank you, my lord. The tentacle seemed to nod in understanding before sliding back beneath the waves. As soon as the tentacle was gone from sight, Stannis and Selyse rushed over to their daughter to check on her. Stannis checked her closely then, seeing she was well and the grayscale was gone, stared up at me with thankful eyes. Your grace, there are no words. We are forever in your debt, Selyse wept as she held Shireen tightly. I smiled at them both. You aren't in my debt. Thank the drowned god, it was he who cured your daughter. As the pair fawned over their daughter, I looked out over the crowd and could see people's minds starting to change. A god, a genuine god, had appeared before them. It had come when their queen called to him. It had healed a child suffering from the worst affliction imaginable. It was real. It answered when called to. It affected the world. I could see the wonder and awe. Some faces were still horrified, but the majority were reconsidering their perspectives. It was one more step on the way to bringing Westeros together.